part 2.
So life is going great. Starting at a new school was not bad at all because since I was super young, it was really easy for me to make friends right away. And eventually I became besties with this girl who we're gonna call Chelsea. We met whenever we were in 3rd grade, and after we met, we were inseparable. We literally hung out so much to the point where our parents also became best friends with each other. Like, we would go on vacations together, we would go on family outings together, and this also made me super happy because finally my mom was able to live her best life. My best friend's mom was her best friend. Laren treated her like an absolute queen, as he should, period. Where are the Larens at? Like, where did you get him? Because I want to know. Anyway, so all of it was just so much better than I could have asked for. But fast forward, the next few years for me are actually pretty rough. I was in and out of therapy all the time because once I finally got old enough, I feel like my brain finally decided to let me process the trauma that I had went through. Like, you know, I was always able to kind of deny it before and kind of push it out of my head and not really think about it. But eventually it just hit me like a truck. So with all these feelings and emotions finally coming back, I ended up having really bad nightmares about this. And weirdly enough, there was like a whole year straight where I would sleepwalk. And this is not the sleepwalking where you go around your house, you do weird shit, you fuck shit up, and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my god, what did I do? No, wasn't like that at all. It was literally a minute. Literally, like, this like wasn't even like a minute long sleepwalk, but every time I would do the exact same fucking thing. I would grab my pillow and my blanket and I would walk myself to the bathroom. I would get in the tub and I would lay down and just sleep there the rest of the night. I felt like a freak because none of my therapists have like ever had anybody like have this type of or I guess they never heard of like this type of shit happening to somebody. But anyways, this scared the shit out of me even more because I would wake up in the tub and not know how I got there, and it would literally just completely trigger everything all over again. So, you know, that went on until I was about, I want to say, from 13 to 14 years old. And after that, it started happening less and less. You know, isn't it weird how your body can react to like mental trauma? And I'm not even talking about like, you know, like you feel sick to your stomach. No, I'm talking about how like it can literally like affect you physically. Like, some people will stop talking for years. That is just like insane to me. Anyways, keeping myself busy was super therapeutic. Like, I was involved in this after school arts program, which really wasn't even a program. My art teacher actually started it because of me. Pretty much she knew about everything that had happened to me, and I loved to paint. That was one of my favorite things to do. So she started just staying an extra hour with me after school every day so that way I could paint with her. And then she got it turned into an extracurricular activity, or an after school activity. I also did gymnastics and I was in a book club. Why? I feel like most of the things that I did honestly were to make my mother happy. Like, I fucking hated reading books. I hated books. But like I said, I was doing this to make my mom happy because my mom thought that if I was doing all this stuff, I wouldn't have time to think about the situation. So this was therapeutic to her, knowing that she was keeping me busy. I mean, I will say that like one of the other reasons why she wanted me doing this was because she didn't want the same thing happening to me, if you get what I mean. Because usually that stuff runs in the family. You know, the depression, and then more times than not, it leads to that. Which actually, in my family, that is very common. So that's one thing that like I do know that she's talking about. Anyways, but yeah, she was just really worried about me, and to be honest, I would be worried about me too because therapy wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. After I turned 14, I tried every medication in the book to see if anything would help me mentally, but Chelsea really helped me through a lot of it. Anytime I was having a bad night, all I would have to do was call Chelsea, and she would either stay on the phone with me or she would come over and keep me company the whole time. Well, eventually she got a boyfriend who we are going to call Brandon. And Brandon was a super nice guy. He treated her extremely well. Like, I could not have asked for a better guy to be dating my best friend. Well, the one night we are all hanging out, and one of Brandon's friends was there who we're gonna call Shane. I didn't really talk to Shane that night. Instead, it was mostly just Chelsea and the other guy's girlfriends and I all hanging out. But the next day, Chelsea and I are in school, and she's like, oh my god, guess what? You know, and I'm like, what? And she's like, guess who asked me for your number? And I'm like, who? And she's like, Shane, the really cute guy who was there last night. And I wasn't mad. Shane was extremely good looking, okay? And to be honest, he was also really funny, okay? Like, he had a really good sense of humor. Like, I could hear him making jokes while the girls and I were talking, but really I was like low-key eavesdropping, kind of trying to see what he was about. And you know what? I could tell that some of his jokes were like low-key directed towards me. Like, he wasn't like making fun of me or anything, but he would look at me and then say something funny and see if I would laugh, you know? It was cute. So him and I started talking, we started dating, and things are great, okay? And it was awesome because, listen, Shane and Brandon are best friends. Chelsea and I are best friends. So we were able to go on double dates. We literally would go bowling every Friday night. But there's always a but. That only lasted for about, I want to say 2 months. I think 2 months. So on my 17th birthday, we were supposed to go to my birthday party that Chelsea was throwing at her house, and you know, he's at my house while I'm getting ready because he was gonna drive me there. So I put on my cute dress, I do my makeup, and he looks at me and he's like, do we really have to have our tits and our ass out? Like, can this just be a night where like we don't have to do that? I was wearing a dress that like came to a v-neck, but it wasn't a low v-neck. It was more of like a, you can see that much of fucking cleavage, barely. And the bottom part, like the rest of the dress went down to my knees, like right above my knees. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, no, I honestly just think it's really fucking funny how as soon as we're about to be around a bunch of dudes, you decide that you're gonna dress like this. Which wasn't true at all, because literally all we do is hang out with your fucking friends 24/7. And even then, I have my hair and my makeup done. And I've literally worn booty shorts around your friends. So what's the real issue here? So then I look at him and I'm like, all right, well, what do you want me to do about it? Because this was the dress that I bought for my birthday and I did not buy a backup one in case this happened. And he was like, you know what? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely fucking nothing. But I don't want to hear shit whenever I start putting that same energy in. Because, you know, I'll just start dressing up to be around females. So at this point, he has already made me cry and I've ruined my makeup. So I go into my closet. I get changed into a pair of leggings and a sweater. And he goes, well, you might as well put the dress on. What the fuck is the point of changing if you're still gonna fucking wear basically the same shit? So I go into the closet and I put jeans on. And then I come out and he's like, Nelsy, was that so fucking hard? And guys, that's not even the half of it. Like the one time we went to a concert, right? For our anniversary. And there was this guy next to me who was drunk, you know, he's swaying around, you know, he's at a concert, he's enjoying himself. You know, he's kind of like moving towards me a little bit, you know, not really in a way of like he wants to get close to me, but like stumbling around. Well, I guess he got too close to me because that's whenever Shane grabs my wrist and yanks me towards him. He yanks me towards him and I fall into the guy in front of him. So, you know, I like get up and I apologize. I'm like, hey, like, I'm so sorry about that, you know? And I turn around and I look at him and he's just giving me the fucking death stare. And, you know, we get into the car and he's like, you know, all I try to do is give you the world and you just shit on me all the time. You want attention from other guys so bad, so you have to go and you have to stand next to a guy. You purposely knocked into the guy in front of us, which is just like fucking embarrassing. And don't even say that it wasn't on purpose because I literally saw you eyeing him up the whole concert. No, actually, I'm literally 5'2" and I'm trying to fucking see over his head. So thank you very much. So, you know, of course, I'm bawling my fucking eyes out in the car and I'm like, listen, like, I'm sorry if that's what you thought I was doing, but, and then he cuts me off and he's like, it's not what I thought you were doing, it's what you were actually fucking doing. Stop gaslighting me. You know what that reminds me of? Does anybody remember that episode in Euphoria where like Kat is like trying to get her boyfriend to break up with her because she doesn't want to break up with him? So she's like low-key gaslighting him into breaking up with her. Yeah, that's like what this reminds me of. Anyways, and yes, I know my foundation does not match my neck. Please leave me alone. So, you know, he drops me off at my house. I get out of the car, go upstairs, crawl into bed, and literally just fall asleep. I wake up in the morning, try to text him, and he has me blocked on everything. So then I call Chelsea to tell her about the whole situation, right? And she's like, okay, I'll tell Brandon to talk to him. And she calls me back and she's like, well, he said that he's not gonna talk to you because you were doing this, that, and the next. And I was like, yeah, but I literally told you what actually happened. Like, he's literally twisting the whole situation around on me. And she was like, I don't know, he seemed really upset. And to be honest, it's like a he said, she said situation. So I just like don't want to be involved because I don't know which one of you to believe. Like, really? Really? Okay. So, you know, 2 days later, he unblocks me on everything. And he texts me and he's like, why do you have to lie so much? Chelsea told me what happened. And if you actually think that that's how things went down, you need to go see your fucking psychiatrist and get your meds fixed. Because clearly you're fucking delusional. So after that, like the good person I am, I apologize. Tell him I'm sorry. We move on from the situation. Now, I want to say right after I turned 19, we decided to get a place together, you know, adult things. And things have still been super rocky between us. But I really love this kid, so I wanted to make things work. And I thought us moving in together would be the best thing for us, so that way we could be together 24/7 and we would actually be able to talk out arguments instead of just arguing over the phone. And things were okay. until they weren't. Anytime I would go out of the house, I was being accused of cheating on him. Yep. And when I hung out with my family, he would accuse me of not really being with them and lying to him, even though I would literally send him pictures and videos and even try to FaceTime him to show him that I was there. So that led to me staying home 24/7. And the one week I was not feeling well at all. So I was literally like bedridden. I had a fever, I was puking and everything. And what does his ass do? Does he bring me soup in bed? Does he bring me some hot tea? No. He comes in the room and he starts screaming at me and yelling. And he's like, you need to get up and get a fucking job. I'm not gonna go to work for you to sit home 24/7 and not do shit. Living off of my food, my money, the electricity that I pay for. Like, you don't even have the decency to do anything around this fucking house while I'm at work. You're fucking useless. And I want to say at this time, I really had nobody to talk to about this stuff because one, I didn't want him to look like a bad person to my parents, so I didn't want to badmouth him to them. I could tell that Chelsea was low-key starting to distance herself from me. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say distance herself, but she just was getting a little bit too busy for us to be friends like we used to be, if that makes sense. Now, while this is all happening, I also stopped going to therapy because anytime I went to therapy, what happened? I got accused of cheating on him. The first issue was he didn't like that my therapist was a guy, so I requested a new therapist, you know, got set up with a female. So then he would drop me off at the office, and then he would sit outside in the parking lot and wait the full hour until I was done. But if I even came out a few minutes late, oh my God, he was gone. I could literally be a minute late and he's driving out of the parking lot. He does not care. And then he would send me a text message or, you know, leave a voicemail saying, you're such a fucking slut, you can find your own ride home. So that's why I stopped going to therapy. And when you stop going to therapy, they stop giving you your medication. Yeah. And everybody who is like knows about psych meds and stuff like that, you know that if you just like stop taking those cold turkey, it's not good. Well, this ended up sending me into a fucking manic episode, which literally lasted, God, I don't even know how long, but it lasted a long freaking time. I eventually started sleepwalking again. And you know what? He was actually so sweet though. He wouldn't wake me up with breakfast in bed. He wouldn't wake me up with flowers. He wouldn't wake me up with like a morning coffee or, you know, a cute little kiss on the nose. He would turn on the scalding hot water or freezing cold water. And I know you guys are probably thinking, well, what does that do? Well, because I started sleepwalking again, that meant that I was grabbing a blanket and a pillow in the middle of the fucking night, which I don't remember, and literally going and sleeping in the bathtub the rest of the night. You know, so I would either wake up to freezing cold water hitting me in the face or scalding hot water burning the shit out of my skin. And then, you know, he'd be standing over me looking down and he'd be like, I don't know why you have to do this dramatic ass shit. Like, you want to stop being woken up this way? Then stop fucking pulling this bullshit. And I tried explaining to him, but he didn't give a fuck. Well, the one night, I guess I got up in the middle of the night and went to grab my pillow and went to grab a blanket. And it got to the point where I was literally keeping a separate blanket in the bed because I didn't want to take the one that he had and him wake up and like freak the fuck out on me. So, you know, I go and I grab my pillow and I grab my blanket, I guess, and I woke up to him grabbing my wrist, throwing me on the bed, and him holding me down. You know, I'm thinking I'm having a fucking nightmare. I was in a pitch black room. I couldn't see fucking shit. I'm freaking out because I'm not in my bed where I just was, where I fell asleep earlier. You know, I'm being woken up by being thrown on the bed, pinned down by a fucking grown man, and him screaming in my face to the point where he's spitting in my face. So before I could like fully grasp what the fuck was going on here, and you know, like he's like holding me down, so I go and I reach my head and I fucking bite the shit out of him. You know, he pulls his arm back, lets go one of my wrists, and I grab the glass that's on the nightstand and I fucking break it over his head. Now, finally, I'm like coming to, you know, after that like traumatic fucking shit just happened, you know, because now he's literally just fucking like, oh my God, my head, oh my God, you know, and I'm like, oh fuck. Yeah. So, drove him to the hospital. He ended up needing stitches in his head and in his arm too. I actually ended up needing stitches in my hand because a part of the glass literally like went through my hand a little bit. And on the way home, I'm apologizing to him. I'm trying to tell him that I don't know when I'm sleepwalking. Like, I don't know what is happening. I don't know. I've never been able to remember doing it. And like the worst part about this is I told him about this whenever we first got together. Like, I told him that this was a fucking issue that I had. I even told him this before we moved in together. I was like, listen, like, it doesn't happen that often, to be honest. You know, I've been able to like take care of it. But I do have an issue with, you know, sometimes grabbing a blanket and a pillow and going to sleep in a bathtub. And, you know, after I tell him this, he turns and looks at me and he's like, you know, I get that your dad died and that you went through some fucked up shit, but you can't use that excuse for the rest of your life. Do you think the next person is going to give a fuck what you went through? No, they aren't. And you know what? Because nobody else will tell you, I'll be the first one to. So stop using it as a fucking excuse for your behavior. So I apologize again because I don't know what else to do at this point. And he's like, yeah, you're not coming in the house tonight. He's like, you're either going to sign yourself into a mental hospital tonight or you're gonna pack your shit and leave. So obviously I don't want to lose him. So I turn the car around and I go and drive myself to a fucking mental hospital. You know, went through the motions, talked to a therapist. They told me everything that I already knew they were going to say. You know, 1, I need to be back on my meds. 2, I need to be going to therapy regularly. Pretty much everything that I was doing before this to cope with what the fuck I went through. So then I had Shane come in and I had him listen to what the therapist had to say.
Like for part 3,